Hello and welcome to Camping World Stadium in Orlando, Florida, where Tennessee just shut out Iowa in the Citrus Bowl to win 35-0. I'm Ryan Sylvia. This is Noah Taylor. We're with VolReport.com on the Rivals Network, and we just watched a very, very young Tennessee team play very, very well against Iowa. Not a dynamic offense necessarily, but a very respected defense and a very respected special teams unit. And I feel like Tennessee feels like they won all three phases of the game, and that's why they're walking away with a 35-point win. To get things started, we have to talk about the man of the hour, the man of the day, and kind of the man of Knoxville going forward for these next few years. Nico Iamaleava, freshman quarterback, gets his first start for the Vols today in the Citrus Bowl. And like we just said, Iowa with the good defense, but it felt like Nico did a good job, all things considered. He's going to run it in for 3 touchdowns, pass for 1, hits McCall and Castles, who that's both of his passing touchdowns so far in his true freshman season are going to Castles. And he also ended up finishing with 151 passing yards on the game. Good completion percentage, didn't turn the ball over. I think that was a big thing that people were kind of waiting to see what happens. Where's that freshman mistake going to come from? When is he going to look like an 18, 19-year-old kid? It just never really happened. He seemed calm in the pocket. He maneuvered well. Kind of the biggest issue, I guess, if that's even the word you want to use, but the biggest thing you can take from this, I think, is learning when he needs to maybe get rid of the ball. Looked like he maybe was a little too patient at times in the pocket, and with this patched up offensive line that's missing John Campbell Jr., that's missing Javonte Spraggins, he was running for his life a few times. It kind of felt like back there, maybe sometimes you got to get rid of the ball, get out of the pocket, get rid of it. But overall, felt like a really solid game from him and gives you a lot of confidence going forward. Another guy, though, making his first career start is sophomore Dylan Sampson, with Jabari Small and Jalen Wright headed towards the NFL. It was the Dylan Sampson show today. What did you think about him?
Yeah, played really well. You know, it's kind of funny. Tennessee leaned heavily on the run. They've done that a lot this season. But a guy, when you go back and you look at the stats, it's like 133 yards. That was, like you mentioned, an Iowa defense that's really, really elite, or has been this year. And one area they've been strong is in run defense. Tennessee's able to exploit that. Obviously, Iamaleava picks up a lot of yards on some critical plays, but Dylan Sampson does too, with some, I think, a hard-fought 133 yards rushing. Doesn't find the end zone, but I think the running back group as a whole, one of those positions where you got a really good glimpse for the first time, a full glimpse of what that room's going to look like next season. Cam Seldon had a good performance, some strong runs. So overall, really good performance out of that running backs room, but Sampson especially, a guy that's going to carry a lot of the load next season, and you got a little bit of a glimpse of that tonight.
Sampson was the main guy, but Cam Seldon, I thought he played phenomenal for his first game, where he was really called on at all. In all of his other appearances, it was just special teams run. It was just action here and there at the end of blowouts. He was relied upon today, and I thought he had a really good game. He was on the field on at least one of those touchdown drives, maybe a second one as well, if memory serves.
Picked up the first down, too.
Picks up some big first downs, so young guys taking over, playing really well. You saw some call Scrow White a younger guy. Feels like calling Dylan Sampson a younger guy. They're both sophomores, which is young, but they've played so much. They feel like veterans at this point, but he has a good game. Chaz Nimrod, Caleb Webb, they continue to impress as well. So a lot of young pieces on this offense. It's kind of the key word, young, but felt like they played at a pretty high level, and you got to feel pretty good about it. One thing that I thought was a little interesting, Iowa defensive lineman Joe Evans talks to the media, and he kind of admitted that the pace got to him a little bit. They're not used to playing that type of offense, said that they try to emulate it in practice, and it's just really tough to do. So Tennessee continues to kind of scheme up these advantages, it feels like, and it worked out today, obviously, with the 35-0 win. Swing it back over to you, though. James Pierce Jr. Nico wins MVP. I can confidently say, talking to other media members, second place was James Pierce Jr. 1.5 sacks, I believe, a pick 6. Great game from him. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, one of those guys that I was one of the guys that voted for him. Of course, Nico had an argument. They both did for it. Nico ends up with it. When you're talking about sophomores, guys that kind of the super softs for Tennessee, that James Pierce is one of them, had a really, really strong start to this season. I think kind of towards the tail end of SEC play there, it kind of cooled off a little bit because teams were just emphasizing him so much. But it was good to see him come out today, really changed this game in a lot of ways. You mentioned the pick 6 there. He also helped set up one of Nico's touchdowns because he knocks the ball loose from Deacon Hill right here behind us at the goal line. So just a really big game for him. And that pick 6, I thought it was interesting. Josh Heupel mentioned we've got him on the jugs a lot. And James Pierce Jr. may have been a little bit confused why they would have an edge rusher, practicing catching the ball. it paid off today. I mean, he did look like a defensive back out there, stepped in front of the pass and really kind of changed it. I mean, the game was out of reach at that point, given what Iowa's offense and how bad they are. But that really kind of put the exclamation point on this win for Tennessee. And Josh Heupel, I think, one of the quotes of the night was it was good seeing a big man like that run down the sideline. So really good game for him, and one of those guys that Tennessee's got to feel really good about going into next year.
He turned on the jets going down that sideline. I would love to see one of those mile per hour analysis things where he hit the peak speed. Because, I mean, if you were squinting, maybe you did think that was a cornerback. It wasn't the hardest play in the world, really poor read from Deacon Hill, but James Pierce Jr. took advantage, and you got to kind of nod your hat at that. Another sophomore, another edge rusher, this time a guy stepping up in the replacement of Tyler Bear, and Tyree West with a really good game today as well. He got to the quarterback for sacks. He was everywhere on the field. A really nice game from him. Like I said, Tyler Barron's gone. Who's going to step up there? You have a couple names. Well, if you want to go with the younger, more athletic, kind of highly touted guys, Tyree West, really highly recruited out of high school, ends up at Tennessee. Maybe haven't seen it all in his first 2 years. Well, we saw it tonight, and if he can kind of capture that and bring that moving forward, Tennessee's going to have another really good defensive line. They were great at getting the quarterback all season. Tyree West and James Pierce Jr. being your two edge rushers playing like that, good luck. That's really, really good stuff, even at the SEC level. Then you got to take a step back a little bit and look at the secondary. It was interesting. Tennessee, obviously a 4-2 nickel scheme. There's a few times, more than a few times, a good amount of this game where Tennessee was in a 4-3 with 3 linebackers on the field, which was interesting. Maybe cut into Jordan Thomas's time a little bit at the star position, but he was able to get some reps as well. And then Ricky Gibson, another young guy stepping up at corner with Kamal Haddon gone with Nico Slaughter in the portal. And then at safety, replacing Wesley Walker, you had Andre Turrentine, not necessarily a young guy, but one that hasn't necessarily seen a lot of runs since transferring in from Ohio State a couple of years back. I felt like that kind of patchwork secondary did a decent job, a pretty good job against Iowa. Iowa's offense isn't the biggest challenge in the world. Maybe it was a good first test for some of these young guys, but there was moments where maybe the defensive line didn't get home immediately, and you start to drift your eyes to the secondary and see if there's any breakdowns, and it felt pretty tight. It felt like there was good coverage. Didn't give Deacon Hill a lot of options, and that plays into the amount of sacks that he took. Because when you don't have anywhere to go with the ball, that's when the defense starts to fold on you. So I thought they did a good job as well. Overall, a pretty solid night. I want to get your thoughts on Jackson Ross, though, really quickly. Tory Taylor versus Jackson Ross was as advertised. A bad punt to start things for Jackson Ross, but by the end of the game, man, he was phenomenal. 7 punts for him, 5 of them pinned inside the 20. What'd you think about that kind of special teams battle?
Yeah. And it was a game changer, which you kind of, that's what you want out of your special teams unit. And we know the deficiencies of this Iowa offense, but it really helps when they're starting drives inside their own 10-yard line. It also helps when you got a defense that stop them at the goal line too. Turrentine, one of those guys that gets that pick there. But outside of, like you said, that one shanked punt to begin with, he really settled in, played really well. And you know what? I'll give Jackson Ross an assist on the fumble that James Pierce set up, because it had them pinned back a little bit and had them back there. And just a really, really good game. Like you said, we were expecting that, special teams to be a factor in this game. We thought at one point maybe it looked like D. Williams was going to be a game breaker there. He was obviously down.
Trying.
Yeah, but it kind of seemed like a game where, as good as Taylor is as a punter, you were going to need to kind of match that a little bit. I think Jackson Ross did that by pinning them deep and really not giving Iowa a chance.
And it was interesting to see how much Heupel changed his own philosophies in some ways to kind of deal with a unique opponent in Iowa. One of those is on special teams. 4th and inches at midfield. I mean, more often than not, you're seeing Heupel go for that, especially up 14-0, feeling like he could put in that death blow. But he knew that if he sends Jackson Ross onto the field and he pins him inside the 10, there is no shot that their defense is giving up a score. So he was fine with it. He said 14-0, that feels like a 28-0 advantage against Iowa. We're going to keep punting it down the field, and we're going to dare you to put together a drive, which, judging by the big goose egg on the scoreboard, they were never able to do. The closest they got, as you mentioned, the Turrentine pick, where that was off of the Jackson Ross punt. So you have the good field position. Mentioned the 4-3 defense earlier, different kind of approach with the way Iowa's offense likes to pack things in, get another linebacker in there to help in the run game. But then on offense as well, on some of those short yardage situations, it looked like Iowa football a little bit, going to 13 personnel at a time they had 3 tight ends and an extra lineman on the field to go along with the running back. So they weren't afraid to get big, having both Castles, Warren in the game, and then also adding Salmon in the mix. It was interesting to see. It was kind of cool to see Heupel adjust in that type of way. That's been maybe a criticism on him, especially after the Alabama game, which that's an in-game adjustment, but it was interesting to see how Heupel approached this one with all of those differentials. To get things wrapped up today, Heupel's talked about how this is not only the cap to the 23 season, but they looked at this as kind of the first game of the 2024 season. So with that said, way too early prediction, what is Tennessee doing in the regular season next year?
Yeah, I feel a little bit like it's similar to what this season. We kind of thought 10 wins was the ceiling for this team. They finished just short of that, obviously, with 9-4, getting that 9th win today. But I think the ceiling's higher for Tennessee. I don't want to put any unfair expectations, say, well, 10 wins is the floor. But
sure,
it's a team I think that's poised with the expansion of the playoff. Could realistically get into that top 12 and get in there. I like the way the schedule sets up. I know we'll delve more into that here in the offseason with the new look SEC schedule that they have. Some tough challenges on there, which you're going to expect, but you get a lot of really big games at home, and obviously you get most of your defensive line back. You get most of your offensive line back. You get your quarterback, Nico, the guy you've been waiting for, is here. He's got a really good game under his belt already. Going to only get better, I think, from that point. And then the young guys you bring in too, the transfer portal guys you bring in as well on offense and defense. So I don't know if I'd be ready to say what that official record prediction would be, but I think it's fair to have some pretty good expectations for this team.
I'll give mine 9-3, and I think that some people will be disappointed in that just because you won those 10 games in the regular season with Hendon Hooker and company. But I think you have to look at it like this as a Tennessee fan. You go 9-3 next year. You return a lot of guys for the upcoming year. You do have to replace a lot of pieces on the offensive line and some other areas that will be out of eligibility, but you return a lot of pieces. You have some guys that will be freshmen, sophomores next year that'll start to get experience under their belt, and I think you can really take a run at the SEC at a good college football playoff spot with the, as you mentioned, the 12-team expansion in that following 2025 season. 9-3 though, I don't think that's anything that you get too upset about with the redshirt freshman quarterback and everything considered. 9-4 season this year though, things clearly trending upwards for Josh Heupel. We're at VolReport.com though. Head over to VolReport.com for all of our written content over on the Rivals Network, and make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel as well, as football season never is truly over in Knoxville. So we will continue to provide coverage as we head into an off season now, but also basketball. Men's basketball now ranked number 5 in the country, a Final Four contending team. The women's basketball program, rough start, but Rakia Jackson is back, so you feel good about that. And then before you know it, in February, Tony Vitello and company will be taking the baseball field. So there's never an off season in Knoxville. Make sure you head to VolReport.com. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. Grab yourself a subscription over at our Rivals site. Thank you for watching.